It's fascinating stuff, and I have to say, I'm still kind of reeling from the revelation that Michael Cohen stole money from the Trump organization, and that wasn't, at least to my knowledge, that the prosecution didn't get that out earlier, because it's not as though the prosecution is going to be helped by further evidence that Michael Cohen is a shady character. I'll get to the newest stuff in a second, but what's your reaction to that news? Because that was just kind of stunning.
I'm shocked that we are hearing it for the first time on day 3 of cross-examination of Michael Cohen, that the prosecution did not take the sting out, did not front it, because it goes to the heart of the actual case. It's not just about establishing him as a liar. They've done that. The prosecution fronted that. We knew that. He has convictions. But going to the heart of what you were telling your employer about what money you were owed and the extent of it, we're talking about $420,000. We've already seen the payment structure here.
Right, this isn't like $15.
It's not $15. And if you go to the tablet, you can break down what was already known. We've known about what the breakdown of the money is. $130,000 to Daniels and her attorney. You've got $50,000 that's Redfin. This is important here. This was mentioned today, that he only gave Redfin $20,000, and he handed it to them in a brown paper bag, by the way, just thinking about how odd that is.
And just one quick note, Redfin is this political organization that apparently, according to Michael Cohen, helped them goose these bogus internet polls about which candidate is in the lead, et cetera, et cetera. And also, according to Lanny Davis, provided adoring fans for Trump's announcement of his candidacy in June 2015. Sorry.
Really important point to add why this is. They only got $20,000 of it.
And even though the bill was for
$50,000, and you have $180,000, which is again the double of these two combinations, and then a bonus for Cohen. Remember, all that we have so far to link Donald Trump to these payments, in part, is the statement that "quote unquote" he approved it. We also know we have information about where the checks were, how it was signed. But remember, McConney, that was one of the comptrollers of the Trump organization, taking notes from Alan Weisselberg about the money payment. So this is part of what we're talking about. Why this is so important here is because the heart of the matter is that Donald Trump was complicit, caused to have this happen, and knew about the money that was going and why. If they can establish Michael Cohen as somebody who is not to be trusted about the amount of money as well, then they might be able to suggest that Donald Trump had no idea what he was truly paying.
So one of the things that's going on right now is Todd Blanche is saying, you stole from the Trump organization based on this expected reimbursement from Redfin. In other words, he's telling the Trump organization, I need $50,000 to pay off Redfin, and he actually only gives Redfin $20,000. He pockets the other $30,000. To cover up this $130,000 payment, you lied to Weisselberg about how much you needed for Redfin. Blanche asked, correct, Cohen says. Blanche is focused on the retainer agreement. So the conversation that you had with Mr. Weisselberg about the retainer agreement and the fact that there would not be one all took place in the meeting you had along the meeting with Trump. Blanche asked, yes, sir, said Cohen. If you would have had one, would you have had one between you and your client? Blanche asked, correct, says Cohen. Who would that have been? Blanche asked, Mr. Trump. Cohen said. Blanche is now showing emails to Cohen from Alan Weisselberg on January 31st, 2017 with the subject, note and mortgage modification agreement for Trump Park Avenue condominium. Thank you, Weisselberg says to him. You never stopped by for a bro hug. Anyway, please prepare the agreement discussed so we can pay you monthly, Weisselberg writes. Blanche pulls up an email from Weisselberg to Jeff McConney, that is his right-hand man, Weisselberg's right-hand man that Laura was just talking about, noting that the checks were signed off by Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, asking why they signed and not Trump, because they were the trustees, Cohen said. Blanche confirms with Cohen that his email signature after Trump took office announced his title in every message he sent. It always said personal attorney to President Donald J. Trump. Blanche continued, his job changed, meaning President Jobs changed, yours didn't. Cohen, correct, Cohen confirmed. So this is I suppose, Ellie, a fruit of the poison grape. I'm botching the metaphor, but the idea, like you are saying, they are basing this entire thing on these memos, these bills. Right. That's the documentary evidence that people like Lanny Davis have been saying. You don't have to believe Michael Cohen, believe these bills. And now we find out, there's bogus stuff in these bills too that Donald Trump might not have known about, certainly didn't know about.
And that's why this is, to use another metaphor, this is a bomb. This is really important. This is a bomb dropped in the middle of the prosecution's case. Two reasons. One, Michael Cohen was stealing from Donald Trump. He was lying to people about what he was doing with money. He pocketed at least the $30,000 by lying to Weisselberg.
It's
And by
twice, really, by the way, because remember, they double it to avoid tax reasons.
So $60,000, which, by the way, this is crushing to the prosecution's credibility because the prosecution did not ask Michael Cohen about that on direct, and they haven't made him plead guilty to larceny.
Which this is.
So let's start with that. Look, real quick. The other reason it's so important is the money that Michael Cohen stole from under Donald Trump's nose,
By his own admission today.
was part of the $420,000 that Michael Cohen was reimbursed for Stormy Daniels. So the heart of the prosecution's case is that whole setup where they were going to repay Michael Cohen $420,000 to reimburse him for Stormy Daniels. That was all done to pay Stormy Daniels. Trump knew it. Trump knew every penny. That's why he's guilty. Now it turns out Trump is getting robbed by his own guy.
Yeah, I mean, my question here is why has no one coached Michael Cohen, or why does Michael Cohen not say, when asked on this on cross, I don't recall? I mean, isn't that kind of the universal?
Apparently he does recall, though.
He does recall like a lie.
But Tim, is this? I mean, we've been wondering all along. All you need is one juror to say I have reasonable doubt. What's your assessment of whether or not any reasonable juror would have reasonable doubt based on this information?
Well, I think this is significant for reasonable doubt purposes. You now have two major issues. One of the phone calls that wasn't, what he originally talked about, and the calculation of the money that wasn't what he originally talked about. And it's not only, going to his credibility, but it also goes to Alvin Bragg's office's credibility. Because
how did they not get this out ahead of time?
Exactly.
No idea. No idea.
And you have two different things. When it comes to the Schiller call, they're going to argue to the jury, how did they not know that? Why did we have to bring it out? We got it from the text that we got from discovery from them, and apparently Michael Cohen said they never asked him about it. They didn't figure it out.
No, he says Cohen says he has told multiple prosecutors with the DA's office about it.
Correct.
Assuming that's true. I mean, we don't, again, we don't know if that's true. But he's saying he told them about it. They didn't bring it up.
This is worse because this is something that he discussed with prosecutors. Prosecutors knew that the evidence they were putting on was tainted by this additional crime, and they didn't talk about it.
I have a devil's advocate question.
Sure.
Is it possible that the prosecution can come back and redirect and somehow tie what looks like him just flatly stealing money from the Trump organization to him paying himself back in order to cover up the crime that's alleged in this case?
They have to make every effort to rehabilitate Michael Cohen. They have to do so. They also have to rehabilitate, to Tim's point as well, their larger credibility that they may have. A juror could be thinking, well, why didn't I hear this before? You've given me a witness. You've told me about this person. You left out that after going through 90 minutes of all the different documents. But I want to refocus everyone for a second on what the government has to prove and why this is such a bombshell, as we've been talking about. Going to the tablet on this, because the checklist, they have to actually prove everyone.
Bring out the tablet.
Bring out the tablet. They have to prove that there was an intent to defraud. Here is the biggest part of this. If you are the defendant in this case, this is what they have to prove. You made and caused a false entry in the business records. If Michael Cohen was the one to falsify the number of documents there that he was not aware of what he was actually spending or what he was actually paying, well, then you've got an issue. Remember, this is all coming down to 11 checks to Cohen, 11 invoices submitted by Cohen, and then 12 entries in Trump's ledger. Now, one thing that they can do on the actual rehabilitation and certainly in jury instructions is that you have the ability to give an instruction in New York law that talks about intentionally aiding. The law in New York defines it as you may have caused somebody to do so, or that you may be liable if you were the one in some respect or another to actually help somebody to do the crime itself. This is important, but you have to make sure that you can still prove that there was the intent to defraud, the intent to falsify. If Michael Cohen was the one to falsify, it's an interesting political decision that Trump had to make for his defense counsel. On the one hand, they spent a great deal of time in his books, right, talking about how he was one to sign the checks. No detail is too small to consider. Here's what any billionaire knows. You run a business this way. You have to know what's really going on inside of your business. Well, he has to admit, for the sake of his defense, that he was hustled by Michael Cohen, that he did not know what was going on. If that's the case, he had a problem.
I just have to say, this is prosecutorial malpractice. This is a failure by prosecutors to either know this and not raise it with Michael Cohen on his direct, or to not know it which would mean Michael Cohen's lying right now. And here's just in
But we don't know that yet, that they have not, that they've truly failed to rehabilitate. I mean, to call it misconduct is quite a sweeping statement.
No, not
but to
misconduct. I didn't say
not-
misconduct. I said
Or
malpractice.
malpractice.
It's
Okay,
poor
well-
practice.
But to not bring it up, to not
right.
bring, if you're a juror and you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, this trial's almost over.
Right.
And we're finding out that this document that is the crux of the matter has, the term is fruit of the poisonous tree, which is a doctrine that I'm not referring to because that has to do with like an illegal search. But the idea that this is, this is what the case is about, this document. And what you're telling me that there's lies in here from Michael Cohen that you didn't tell me about until now?
Exactly. And to be clear, I said malpractice, meaning terrible practice, not unethical. That would be misconduct. The crux of the prosecution's case is Donald Trump knew what that $420,000 was for. It was for Stormy Daniels. Michael Cohen read him in on all of it. He was fine with it. Turns out Michael Cohen was stealing from Donald Trump within that $420,000. And Donald Trump not only didn't know, he certainly never would have agreed to be robbed by Michael Cohen.